What is happening, super fans? You're listening to Behind the Mask, the show where we chat with your favorite superhero fiction authors about the worlds and heroes they are writing. Behind the Mask is brought to you by the amazing folks over at superherofiction.com. I'm your host, Franklin Kendrick, and today on the show, I am excited to be chatting with author Adrienne Dellwo. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Very glad to have you on. So, the first question that I always do is, when you are not a superhero behind the keyboard writing superhero fiction, what is your secret identity out in the real world?
My secret identity, I'm a mom. I've got 2 teenage kids, and I'm a freelance writer. I write mostly medical content for online use. And I'm also a copy editor for the same company. So I do a lot of writing and editing when I'm not writing and editing.
Just to keep variety.
Right. And every now and then, to really shake things up, I write a screenplay instead of fiction or medical content. And sometimes I go out and produce or direct a short film. So, yeah.
Cool. It's like they all sort of like weave in and out of each other with like skill set, where it's like it's easy to jump back and forth between writing is used for so many things.
Yeah, and once you get used to one style, you can kind of adapt it to another format and kind of play with that, challenge yourself. So yeah,
definitely. So my next question for you is, what got you into writing originally? And then specifically, I mean, I kind of know the answer just because I've done my research, but what got you interested in working in the superhero fiction genre?
As far as writing in general, I don't really remember because I've been a writer for so long. The first thing I wrote just for fun was a play in the 3rd grade. That I wrote or produced and directed after casting it with my friends and rehearsing on out at recess. We got to perform it for the whole 2nd and 3rd grade, and then I was pretty much hooked from then on for writing and performing. So that's what I've spent my life doing. Went to journalism school. I worked in TV news for a long time, little stints in newspaper, radio, magazine columns, and then internet. So, I mean, I just am a writer. I think I was just kind of born wanting to tell stories. As far as the superhero genre in particular, it was kind of a fluke. It's like I'd always loved superhero movies and that kind of thing, but I mostly was a horror fan growing up, so I kind of assumed that I would write horror. And then a good friend of mine, who was actually a brilliant horror author, he'd asked me to read a short story he'd written that was a superhero origin story. And I asked myself, after reading that, a question that I've asked myself twice, and it is essentially entirely responsible for my writing career in fiction, which is, if I were going to write something in that genre, what would it be? The first time I asked myself that was about like an alternate world fantasy. If I were going to build my own world, what would it be? Mm-hmm. That spawned the idea that became my almost complete trilogy. Now it's urban fantasy. And this time it was a superhero story. So I asked myself that question as I was like shutting my laptop and laying down to go to sleep. So, of course, 5 minutes later, I was up opening the laptop and jotting down a bunch of notes as things just started spiraling through my head crazily, like they always do for writers when we try to sleep. And I wrote the notes to what would eventually become a short story called Dax and the Red Eyes. It was about a severely developmentally delayed little boy with phenomenal superpowers. And then that short story eventually provided the inspiration for my first superhero novel, which is Hero Academy, which is part of Ian Thomas Healy's Just Cause universe. He has opened it up and made it a shared universe now, which is fun because I could just kind of jump in and start playing in the sandbox that was already full of all these toys. But I got to write the first one that was set at the Hero Academy, which is referenced from the first book on. Mm-hmm. And I got to bring back Dax, who's like my favorite character, my most beloved character that I've ever created, and kind of explore his situation, what happened after the story. And and bring in a whole ton of new superheroes, which creating a whole school full of superheroes, it's probably the most fun thing I've ever done in my life.
Oh my gosh, yes. That's
Yeah.
that's such a good, like, a theme that I'm so happy exists and is like accepted. It's like, because really, I mean, part of the target audience is like teenagers in high school or elementary school. And then when you think back of like how crazy it was to even survive any sort of school setting, you're like,
Yeah.
you add the superpowers to it, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's like infinite possibilities of conflicting
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah, it was so much fun just sitting down and creating all the kids, all the faculty, all the different powers. Like, what would this school seek out in someone who was teaching this type of subject, and what kinds of backgrounds do these kids all have, and what are they bringing in? I created something that Ian loved called the Obvious Club, which is the ones who are the obvious superheroes, the ones with the wings or horns or purple skin, whatever, and who face some extra layers of difficulty, either through prejudice or through the celebrity of people wanting come up and touch their wings, or as being extra recognizable as a superhero. So yeah, it just adds all kinds of layers of complexity to that time in your life that's already so insane.
It's like your life is going to change when you get to a certain age, and it will change even more in this universe.
Yeah, when you grow wings at age 14, life
Oh my
takes a
God.
different turn. Yeah.
Yes, goodness. So your first like full length book is part of the Just Cause universe. Do you want to chat a little bit about I mean, sort of like the overall, like what aspects of the universe are unique to your installment?
Um, that's interesting. I did explore the obvious mutations, the visible ones, more than Ian really had before. Um, his main character for the early part of the series was Mustang Sally, who's a speedster. So she looks normal until she turns into a blur and disappears. Whereas my main character, I'll show you the picture here, Chloe, she was a competitive gymnast who sprouted wings. Can't compete as a gymnast anymore because those things really get in the way. Plus, she has an advantage. So she ends up at the Hero Academy. And like I said, this is the first book to be set there. It had been mentioned because in the first Just Cause book, Mustang Sally has just graduated and is starting her internship with the Just Cause organization. But this one it's set there. And so, I got to develop the entire campus and really explore this institution that, is becoming kind of a time-honored thing at this stage. They're starting on their second generation of heroes. One of the incoming freshmen is the daughter of a working superhero. So it's kind of been around long enough that it's become important and significant culturally now.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, this is a theme that Ian has explored also, but I definitely delved into the issues of prejudice with people not wanting superheroes around, or thinking of them as an other, like we tend to do with different groups of people. It's kind of a recurring theme, and then that one especially becomes important in my second Just Cause book. So
Excellent. So how much time did it take you to sort of map out, like, here's what I want the school to be, here's like teachers and subjects and all that jazz?
it didn't take a terribly long time, because once Ian had offered me the opportunity to write something, to pitch him a story and possibly write a book for this world. And I was so inspired once I started thinking about the possibilities of a superhero high school, that I really just kind of delved into it and spent a few days just immersing myself in that. I brainstormed lists of powers and Then I wanted the school to be representative of our society. It's a government funded school, so it's not like it's, you know, the rich superhero kids. It's all the superhero kids. And so I sat down with like the last census information and looked at, you know, the proportions of different ethnicities and things in the country and tried to match that. So, you know, I was researching, you know, different surnames and that kind of thing to really lend it that kind of authenticity that this is, you know, fully grounded in this reality. And just, you know, started, you know, mixing and matching the names with the powers and the subjects they taught, and it was so much fun. And I was so excited to get started once I kind of had the seeds of the story in my head. That I sat down and like 3 or 4 days, had, you know, the entire freshman class and a bunch of other like upperclassmen and the faculty and the campus and everything kind of just ready to go.
Oh my gosh, it sounds excellent.
I had way too much fun, but you know, that's what it's all about, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's like, if it's not fun, then my goodness, nothing's going to keep me at this keyboard.
Right? I mean, these people who are, you know, are these tortured authors, it's like, we all have the crippling self-doubt at times, but when I sit down to write, I'm playing, you know, it's, you know, yeah, I write other stuff for a living, but this stuff's for fun. If I don't have fun writing it, how's anyone going to have fun reading it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So my next question for you is, obviously you have like a class of characters, but do you want to pick out a few of your favorite characters that, and sort of say who they are and what sort of superpowers they have been bestowed or that they developed?
Yeah. You know, my main character is Chloe. Chloe Wild, so her code name is Wildwing. She obviously can fly. She has dragonfly wings. Dragonflies are kind of amazing. So I'd originally thought butterfly and then switched to dragonfly. I think it was a little more unique, but it turns out that dragonflies are kind of the superheroes of the insect world. They can fly in ways that nothing else can. So that's fun.
Oh, yeah.
And then she also has a, oh, sorry, electronic noises. She also has rapid healing. And then there's a surprise power that pops up partway through the book. I won't give that away. Her roommate is Lindsay. Balls with her hands and throw them around, and has some limited control over fire. See, Chloe's big crush at the beginning of the book is Zayden, who's telekinetic, who happens to be Dax's older brother from the short story. Some of the more fun ones are more minor characters. There's one, his name's LJ, and he can bring to life anything he has drawn.
Oh, cool.
So he's constantly drawing, you know, complicated schematics for all kinds of crazy things, you know, jetpacks and laser guns or whatever he wants to make real. And then he can focus on that and just pull it right out of the page. And then he's able to combine his powers with a friend he makes at school who can enhance another super's powers. And so he makes him able to like make it larger than he would on his own, and it lasts longer than it would if he created it on his own. So they can combine their powers in this unique way. And that student's twin sister can minimize another superhero's power. So they're a good duo to have on your side in the middle of a fight.
Oh goodness, yeah. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
It's such like, the funny thing to me about coming up with heroes and their powers is it's like, it's thrilling as when you're looking at through the character's eye, it's like, oh, so exciting. But then at the same time, you're like, oh my gosh, I could go totally overboard, and this could be really scary if I'm just going all over the place. So it's like, I love that aspect of it, especially with characters that are in school. It's like, you're figuring out who you are, and you're trying not to, like, you know, cause too much damage to everything around you.
Right. And then how do you maintain order at a school full of superheroes. You've got someone who could read minds. You've got someone who can, hear things at great distances.
Oh, goodness.
So, it becomes a challenge for the administration. It's like, how do you have a conversation in private when this kid's hanging around, and so there are all kinds of difficulties, which is something that I think Ian has explored brilliantly with the superhero prison, which is called Deep Six, which is like 6 miles underground in Montana, with customized cells to hold each prisoner. So yeah, it poses a lot of challenges, but they're fun to. It's fun to figure out what would counter certain powers that might seem, insurmountable, but. You got to get creative and figure it out, which is where the even more fun comes in.
Absolutely. So speaking of super prisons, do you have any super villains in this book?
I do. I'm not going to give away who it is. It is, it's a surprise that comes up in the middle. I hope it's a surprise. But there are some super villains in this one. In Plague, which is kind of a sequel. It involves some of the same characters, and it's about a year later. But in the Just Cause universe, all the books are supposed to stand alone, so you can pick up any one and read it and understand and have a good story. But of course, I think they're better in context, so it's better if you read them all. But Plague. Show the book cover there. It's set partially on a white supremacist compound in North Idaho. Which is near where I live. Working in TV news here, I got to know those groups way too well. So it's something I grew up being very aware of, and something I've dealt with a lot in my adult life, unfortunately, and seemed like the time was right to explore how the violent militia group would deal with superheroes. Being one more group of people they're not terribly fond of. So it starts out there, and the protagonist is a boy who was raised on the compound and then discovers he has superpowers.
Oh, okay.
So he is in a very difficult position, and really relies on a friend of his who's a newcomer to the compound and doesn't want to be there and would rather be in the outside world. That this one boy has always heard is just a horrible, evil place where you don't want to be. And so I don't have a supervillain in that book because this organization is essentially the villain, and the people running it. So it's more of a human violence against superpowers. Which I think is important at this moment in history to explore, as well as something that superheroes, obviously, X-Men and so many different examples have been used as a stand-in for groups, because we could portray discrimination against that group without getting into territory that made people too terribly uncomfortable. I think we're at a point now where we need to make people uncomfortable so that we can think about some things and correct some problems societally, and look at inside ourselves and see what's really there that we may not want to acknowledge, or that we may not understand or like about ourselves, but there it is. So I thought it was time to make it a little more real world, and have a group that is, made up entirely of just human beings who they are not only against the superheroes, they're against a lot of different types of other human beings as well. So it's got a little heavier. I tried to keep it from getting too dark. But I think, everyone being, the main characters all being teenagers definitely helps with that, because, I live with 2 teenagers. They can be, sad and upset and talk about really deep, heavy issues one minute, and the next minute they're like laughing with their friends on Snapchat. So it's a little more resilient than adults are at times. So that keeps it light.
They don't have the weight of living through like, oh my god, like it's that is something interesting. I feel there's a lot of hero characters that are younger, and sometimes people like stray away from that. But like it's like you say, like I probably didn't realize it until you just mentioned it now. But I mean, yes, like the younger people are more resilient and they're more willing to just get right back up and keep going because they haven't had the world hammer them down so much.
Right. Well, it's like they can confront a societal issue that is heavy and weighty and difficult, but then they don't have bills and work and grocery shopping and that kind of stuff weighing on them on top of that. So it's they have that little bit of a luxury. And not that kids aren't busy and stressed out. I mean, clearly they are, but it's just a different level, and they do have that greater emphasis on their social lives. I remember my son in high school saying something about, well, that's just at home, but these things are out there in my real life.
Yes,
that's where his friends were. That's his real life. That's where it matters.
yeah.
And there's always the giggling and joking and that kind of stuff there. So I think they just are a lot better able to deal with heavy stuff and still be kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention, because you brought up that it's more important now probably than ever to sort of explore serious themes.
Yeah.
One thing that I've noticed when I look back on stuff that I've worked on is, and for anybody listening who is also interested in writing, whether it be superhero or whatnot, but like writing fiction is an excellent way to sort of work out and make sense of things going on around you, because you can manipulate, like it's not like everything is happening around you and you have no control over it. You can take terrible situations that you're stuck in and use them in your writing, and then you can change the outcome. And then who knows, if you put it out there, somebody who is experiencing the same thing, like a hate group or something terrible, will read your work and be given sort of like the hope that like somebody else out there has experienced something that I'm going through. So definitely don't be afraid to explore serious themes, because we do need it.
Yeah, it's like, I write almost exclusively young adult, just because those are always the characters and the stories that seem fun to me, that I get interested in. I should probably talk to my therapist about that, but I'm sure there are unresolved issues from my teen years I'm trying to work out somehow. So several years ago when I was working on my urban fantasy trilogy, I got to a point I was like, oh, that's kind of, because we're in a different dimension where the issues are different, but there was something that seemed like it was getting a little too into a political real world area. Mm-hmm. And I was being very hesitant. And then it happened to be about 4.5 years ago. And I went and watched a debate and said, you know what? I'm going political. If somebody doesn't want to read my book, that's okay, because it's probably not going to be for them anyway. In fact, I have a reader of the Just Cause books who tends to leave reviews talking about how gender and race politics don't belong in superhero fiction.
They've always been there.
I mean, seriously, have you heard of Stan Lee? Because he went there. Yes. And so many other people have gone there too. It's like, I mentioned before, it's almost like that metaphor for, have the superheroes stand in for racism or othering or all these different things. It's any kind of spec fiction genre is a great way, like you said, to explore those things in a different way. But yeah, we always know we've done it right if that particular guy leaves a bad review. So he's kind of our benchmark for, yes, I succeeded in making someone think about this, and and obviously made him uncomfortable. I hope most people will be less uncomfortable than that, but they'll take away something positive from it, even if it's just a little more self-awareness or awareness of the world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh, that's a plane going by. Oh my gosh. I don't know if anybody can hear it, but apologies for, transportation opening back up. But all right, my next question for you is I'm going to sort of do like a modified, because you're working in a shared universe, which I think is really exciting. What are some of the things about the Just Cause universe that really attracted you to want to write in that world?
Part of it was that Ian is very socially and politically conscious without being too heavy-handed with it. And so I really appreciated that. There's, a lot of diversity and inclusion, but also just the sky is the limit. He's got so many different things going on that you can draw from. There's a very rich history that's well established. There's some scientific study that's built up around the superheroes. There are institutions established, which for a writer going in and thinking, okay, if superheroes have been around for the last 50 or 60 years, how would that have impacted society? That's a lot to think about and create, and it was already there, which is, fantastic. And it's, very well constructed, very detailed, very well thought out. But then there's the superpowers, which, the imagination is your only limitation on what superpowers can do. But then he also brings in magic, and in a sort of a lighter, a little more absurdist kind of offshoot trilogy, he's got gods, and in a later book he brings in like supernatural creatures, and so literally you can go anywhere you want to go. He has a bunch of anthologies of superhero stories, and I contributed to a couple of them, and one of them it's not obvious in any way that it's set in the Just Cause universe because it predates anything that's in it, but it brings in what maybe an early superpower. It brings in some supernatural creatures, establishes like a new supernatural creature that I've been wanting to write about for a long time, and it all just fits kind of neatly into that world because anything goes. And somehow it all makes sense. It doesn't get overboard and ridiculous, but I mean there are no limitations. So coming from a horror background and still, loving to explore those darker themes and being into the superheroes and everything, is just, I can go so many different directions that without having to do a lot of that groundwork. And I like doing the world building, but it's a lot of work and it's a lot of thought. And when you can just sit down and say, oh, there's probably an institution, and I'll just like shoot Ian off a message. We talk all the time, especially when one of us is like in the middle of writing a book. It's like, oh, hey, what is there a mental hospital that deals with superpowers? Who are the scientists who I can bring in who would do this? Or do you have an established hero who does this that I could pull in? All these different things. It's just, the world is so rich. I mean, he's been writing in it for 20 years. So there's a crazy amount that's established. And at first I was worried that it was going to be constraining, that I was going to be worried about, breaking systems or stepping on toes, but we've been able to work together really well. And like I say, just like communicating constantly, especially as we're borrowing characters. He's kind of like fallen in love with one of my characters and is writing her now. And, really, if you're willing to kind of put in the time to do that and, to research the world and understand it, it's a lot of fun to do that. Writing is lonely.
That is the one. Yeah, that's the one thing that I've talked to a couple other writers lately where we all sort of like discuss that, where it's like, yeah, we finally all chatted with each other about what we were working on, and like just the act of speaking with somebody about what we have created is, you finally realize like this has been between me and literally nobody else for how many weeks, how many months?
Yeah. I mean, you sit in a room and have conversations with yourself in your head, for months.
Oh yeah.
And so to have someone to bounce ideas off of, I mean, my husband's great at it. He's a writer and a filmmaker and all that kind of stuff too. And so he's like I call him my plotologist. He's my secret weapon. I can sit down and talk through a plot, and he sees all the holes and helps me fill them. And he's great with tactics and strategy and things that are not necessarily my strong point. So yeah, I've got him, but also to have Ian, who knows the world, who knows the story I'm working on, because I've pitched it to him and just talked through aspects of it. It's really great to just be able to say, oh, okay, here's an excerpt. Is this working?
Mm-hmm.
Does this, this characterization of this agency or institution work? Just to have that extra little bit of moral support at times. So you're not just typing in a void and hoping that someone else in the world will get it eventually. Yes. It is really, really nice and really, really helpful at times when you might get bogged down. To be able to go to somebody who understands 100% of what you're doing. I don't have to explain the plot or the world or the characters to him. After, creating my own alternate dimensions and having to come up with their history and politics and economic systems and what the cities are like and all of that, it's really nice to be able to go to somebody else for some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's like, oh, you're not alone. You're not alone in the process.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty frequent. One of us will get some random question about, oh, hey, where was this character from again? Or, what would be the justification for this character getting kicked out of Just Cause? What do you see her doing? And all these little things that, we could kind of help each other with and brainstorm. And, I think it makes it all better when you have that other bit of insight.
Mm-hmm.
And having Ian and my husband Joe to be able to talk things through with is awesome. So anyone who doesn't have that, I mean, find a good writing group, definitely, and a good review group. But yeah, if you can find a couple of writers that you've collaborated with or that you're close to, read each other's stuff, bounce ideas back and forth. Find someone you can do that with, even if you're not, writing in the same universe. Even if you don't have to have that level of communication, it's a good thing to have.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. My next question for you is, so you decide you're going to write in the Just Cause universe. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you drew inspiration from as you worked on your installment in this shared world?
Mm-hmm. I looked to the political situations that were established already, which had some of the certain members of Congress who were not fans of the Paranormal Resources Agency that is newly formed at one point, with a lot of the real world's political aspects, and just also the relationships. I think Ian had done a very good job of establishing what kind of relationships people would have who were in these superhero teams together. They're out there facing life and death. They lose a team member occasionally, and everyone has to, come together and deal with that. Of course, you don't like everyone on your team all the time. There are, differences of opinion. There are personalities that clash. And I think, keeping an eye on that. It's like, yeah, they're superheroes, but they're not perfect. And, some of them are pretty flawed. There was a lot of that. Superheroes are, to some people, an unwanted nuisance, and to other people, celebrities. And so there is a lot of celebrity status and culture around the superheroes, which, makes interesting situations too. So yeah, I was able to kind of draw from all of those things and figure out what it means to, these kids who are just figuring out their powers and trying to adjust to being this other thing that they didn't know they were. While also, having their first boyfriend and going away from home for the first time and being in the spotlight. There's just so much to draw from. That yeah, it was easy to find inspiration.
Oh yeah, I would imagine with it's 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 so relatable. Some of the things are just so relatable that I'm just like, wow, like it. There's no excuse to not just go for it. It's like it's all right there. It's ready to be drawn in and put together in new ways.
Yeah, and there were times where I thought, God, am I creative enough to to come up with something that works in this world? Is it going to be, are my superpowers going to be dull to the other ones that he's established? Because there are so many books and so many characters, and so but once I kind of just took the constraints off and thought, yeah, I don't have to worry about limitations. I can make this whatever I want it. Then it, once I kind of got past the fear, it was just like a big game of what cool things can I make up.
Oh yes, especially when you have, you said he has his trilogy with like gods and mythology. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like it's been used so long that it's like you just want to do something with it for yourself.
Yeah, and just being able to, and there, in most superheroes have a particular gene that has caused their mutations in this universe, but then there are some who don't have it and nobody knows where their powers come from. And like you said, there's the gods and there's magic and there's supernatural and who knows, somebody starts manifesting a power, who knows where it comes from. It could be any one of several things. It could be something that nobody's ever seen yet. So yeah, it's exciting. Right now I'm sitting down and planning my third book in this universe. It'll be Just Cause Interns, which is my freshman class from Hero Academy has graduated and moving into the professional realm now, and they're going to have an old villain pop up that they need to contend with. That will pull some of them back together, and so I'm getting really excited to get back into that world. And I get to create a whole like organization that's underground and a bunch of villain types, and so yeah, I'm getting excited about that.
I'm such a sucker for the secret organizations. Like I always gravitate towards it. Like no matter what, I don't know what it is, but it's just like, oh my gosh, just it just captures my imagination so easily.
Well, and if you look at like some of the best-selling novels of all time, an overwhelming number of them have secret societies. Like it's a thing.
It's just like you want to go find out. Like it's like, why is it a secret? Why are these people joining? How'd they get in there? Like,
what's this all about? It's like we all want to join. Yeah, we all want to be on it. So yeah, it's fun. So yeah, thinking about what kind of underground organization can I create, and what kind of superheroes are in that, and so then you get start playing with the destructive side of the powers with a bit more. And
now that they're going to be loose, they're going to be outside of the academy. So who knows what's going to happen?
And these are like the unregistered heroes. Nobody knows that they're out there, what they can do. So it's harder to investigate than when you don't even know what their powers are.
No, they're not in the database yet.
No. Ian doesn't even know they exist yet, and it's his world.
Oh my gosh!
No, then there's some crazy stuff going on.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So do you have, since you only have one out now, but you have at least 3 that you have planned. Do you have sort of a favorite plot line or a twist that sort of came to you in the moment that you thought, oh my goodness, this is great. This has got to be jotted down like right now.
Oh, geez. I kind of do that a lot because, once I start even the planning process, it'll just be kind of, constantly circulating in the back of my brain, and I'll have ideas. And for Plague, which is my second one, came out about a year ago. That one I did. I had. I'm kind of obsessed with birds. Anyone who's read my urban fantasy books knows that. I have one tattooed on my leg. I mean, I'm obsessed with birds. So I had an idea of how to work a bird into Plague in a way that was significant to the plot. And so that was fun. That was kind of one of those ideas. It's like, oh, wait. So I'm trying to think, how would somebody who wasn't on this compound secretly communicate with someone who was on it? Because it's very tight and shut down. They don't have the internet. They don't have telephones. And so, coming up with a trained bird all of a sudden.
Ooh.
Yeah, I can make that work. And so I have some fun with that. I have some fun at one point with, a hero riding in on a white horse. Just some different things. The protagonist in Plague who starts having superpowers and is afraid of that because he lives on the compound. His power deals with animals. There's dogs and sheep and birds and horses and bugs and all kinds of things that figure prominently in there. So that was a lot of fun to play with.
Sounds great. It's like hiding in plain sight, the communication.
Yeah. Well, and can you imagine? It's like you've been told your whole life that these people are evil, and then you realize that you are one.
Yeah. Oh boy, that's a theme. This is not to go on my own tangent here, but that's a theme that I feel has been popping up more and more that I've noticed, which I'm not opposed to, which is, and people are struggling with it in real life. That like you're raised, like you can't choose your family that you're born into,
right?
But once you get to a certain point, like I was raised to be like, okay, like we'll show you how we live and what we believe and all of this, but like when you get to a certain point, it's up to you to choose what you want and like go for it. And to see some of these stories where it's like characters that are just not given that freedom or option, it's like it's a dramatic storytelling device, but it happens in real life. Like, so
it does. I mean, how many stories have we heard about, someone who's gay or trans and their family doesn't want to accept that, and they go through, a horrible time of thinking there's something wrong with them because they've been raised to think that that's wrong. And what does it mean when everybody around you tells you that your very existence is wrong? That because of something you can't control. That doesn't change whether you're a good person or not. It's just one aspect of who you are.
And it is, that all lends itself to writing in this genre, because just the characters that develop powers. I mean, it is like you said earlier, it is a substitute for. It could be a substitute for anything. But then the theme of being told that there's something wrong with you, I mean, that in real life and in fiction, that stays with whoever it is for a while. So powerful. It's powerful stuff. So never let anybody listening, don't let people tell you that reading the superhero genre in any form, comics, books, or even watching the movies, like it's not just children's stuff. Like,
no.
It can be as serious as you want it to be, and it's probably already out there if you're looking for something. So
it is. It's frustrating to run into it. I spoke to a high school class a few years ago, and the teacher was a little bit taken aback that I said, if you're not into novels, read comic books or graphic novels, and she was
absolutely.
But you're still engaging your mind and imagining, you have a picture, but you're still imagining this action going on, and you're hearing the voices of the characters, and you're finding things you can identify with. And that's what entertainment is about. I mean, we think it's just lighthearted stuff, but you look at the characters that you're drawn to and the stories you're drawn to consistently, and you're going to see who you are reflected back at you. There's there's so much there. I've done a lot of like tabletop role playing games.
Oh,
And
yes.
man, if you sit down and analyze your favorite characters, you will know who you are. I mean,
Yep.
you see things that are important to you. You see, it's like I have this one really close friend. We never argue about anything in real life. We get along great, but our characters can't stand each other so often. we the only fights we've ever had are in character, and it's just because we have a different core philosophy about certain things, and basically moral relativism versus a more black and white way of thinking, and it gets us into trouble in characters all the time. But like I said, we've never actually had an argument as people. You look at your characters, you look at the stories you like, you look at the characters you read. It says a lot about who you are, how you see the world. It helps you fill in the blanks in your worldview. There's so much there in any story. People look down on superhero and fantasy and science fiction, but it's like the biggest themes are explored there in far more nuanced ways than there are in a lot of serious literature, because they're approaching it more head on and real world. And you have to be very careful with that, and it's not approachable for a lot of people. Whereas you tell a story through mutants or superheroes or something like that, and you really can just take off the constraints and go to a lot of difficult places and explore them in ways that are accessible to more people. I've heard them called bubble gum for the brain. It's like it might taste like bubble gum, but there's some nutrients in there too.
Oh yeah, it's like putting the pill inside the like brownie, so it's like, okay, it tastes good, but you do get the medicine with it.
Yeah, exactly. And it, the spoonful of sugar, I guess, that helps it go down a little better. But if you don't let people tell you what you're reading is wrong, what you're watching is wrong, that it's somehow less. Don't let people tell you what you're writing is somehow less. I mean, I bring him up a lot because of just the immense admiration I have. But Stan Lee, I mean, what he did for people of color, just going to the illustrators and saying, put brown people in the background. I don't care who tells you not to, put some in there. And creating a black sidekick for Captain America. What stronger statement can there be than that? Yeah. And just so much. And Gene Roddenberry, creating a multicultural cast in a TV show, way back 50 years ago. These people were not creating lighthearted entertainment for the masses that was just disposable, like some people want to think. This is serious stuff that has had a major impact on generations of people. Those stories have changed our society. Absolutely, more than any single work of literature that you can point to.
And it will continue into the future with new creators and new everything.
Absolutely. And the generation that's coming up now is so much more aware of these things than we were growing up. I mean, I'll watch an 80s comedy with my kids, and then a few years ago I was watching at the Breakfast Club with my daughter. I was like, whoa, there's some really cool stuff here that I did not see when I was 15. And I paused it. I was like, okay, I want to talk about this relationship here for a minute. And she was like, oh my God, she just listed off all the things that were wrong with it. And I was like, you are so far.
Yes, you can't. Okay. Yeah, you can't pull a fast one on kids these days. You really can't.
No, they get it. They get it in ways that like a lot of people in my generation still don't. So yeah, the stories that we're going to get from them are going to blow the lid off the joint.
Oh my gosh, it's very exciting. So it's looking towards the future. What do you have anything that you can sort of you sort of earlier did, but do you have anything that you can sort of hint at or give any current readers sort of like a sneak peek of like what they might see in future books?
Boy, in Just Cause Interns, It's going to start out at the Portland BLM protests.
Ooh.
Imagine that in a scenario where the governor can call out superheroes.
Oh my gosh.
Change the lay of the land a little bit. And then also the supernatural creature that I wrote about in the last anthology is called the Good Fight, the Good Fight 5, I believe this one was. That's all like noir stories. This one is one I've been sitting on for a long time. That's an original supernatural creature, and I am foreseeing potentially a series of novels, some in the 1920s, some modern day. Actually, all peopled with characters that I created or someone close to me created for a role playing game. Uh, so characters that I know and love that are complex and nuanced. One of them I played for like 4 years. And just like some of the most fun characters I've ever had. And they're coming back and coming together for this potentially very long form story that I think will be very interesting. And I did, I thought about it long before I was writing for the Just Cause universe, but now it's probably going to be set there, which will add new layers of interest to it, I think.
Lots of stuff brewing.
Yeah, lots. And I mean, it's fun because in this story with the supernatural creature, it's called the Adumbral, and it has to do with shadow. And it's allowing me to go back to my darker horror roots while still sticking with the fun creativity of the superhero world, and that excites me a whole lot. That I can bring all these things together with these characters that I've been in love with for years.
Excellent. I would say anything to be able to put together multiple genres. I'm here for it.
Yeah. Well, and so there's so little that hasn't been done. Everyone's trying to. I mean, there's no unique story out there. Let's face it. That there are very few actual stories, and we've been telling them to ourselves and each other for millennia since we were in the cave. But it's all essentially the same stories over and over. But we just got to find different ways to tell it. And we're so media saturated now that combining genres and doing things in unexpected ways is exciting and fresh. And that I think that's what people really want. We don't want another one like we've had before. We want something a little different.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's fun. I'm also about to re-release the first 2 books in my urban fantasy trilogy, and then also release the third one for the first time. I had a publisher for the trilogy originally who did not work out. So I was able to get my rights back to the first 2 books. And I'm brushing those up now, and I've got the first draft of the third one ready. So so I have literally 4 books in progress right now,
oh my gosh.
which is a little crazy. But that's going to be on hold for National Novel Writing Month starting in a few days, so that I can focus on interns and finish up my Just Cause trilogy.
I'll say big congrats for being able to get back your rights, because I know that can be like a massive hurdle.
It can. If anyone's out there dealing with, all I can say is look over your contract. Use that wording to your advantage.
Definitely. Content is king right now in the world. So if you have your stories, don't give them away. Please don't. Just if it works, this is I've done so much listening about people that have done professional publishing and all of that. But if it doesn't work out, please, I would say try to get it back. There's no excuse for your stories to be buried somewhere in somebody's file server.
Right.
They should be out there, and so I'm so happy that you're able to get them back.
I was too. It was a big relief, and several months of a bit of a battle of wills, but dig in, stick to it. There are laws to protect you, and hopefully the contract has clauses to protect the author. and also, have someone look over contracts before you sign them. Don't get overexcited and just put your name on the line because, yay, a publisher wants your book.
Yes.
Do your research. I did my research, and I knew that it was a fairly standard industry contract. And it wasn't until 3 months after they accepted my book that the negative reviews started popping up online talking about all these problems people had. And that was after I'd signed a contract, but before the book was out. And so then I was very nervous, and sure enough, I had some of the same problems. It always happens, And but yeah, after a few years of frustration, which is why it's taken me forever to finish that trilogy, because I wasn't going to write the third book and give it to him while we were going through contract issues. And that's when Ian approached me about writing for his world. So I was like, well, that sounds fun. I'll take a break and write that for a while.
Oh, yeah.
But now I'm getting back to it. And yeah, in the next year, hopefully I'll have, like I say, 4 books coming out with the trilogy, and then the Just Cause interns.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I have a question that's not on my list for you, because you did mention that novel writing month is coming up, which is on everyone's minds. So are you participating?
Oh, yeah.
Have you done it in the past?
I have. Just like everybody, just about. My biggest problem with getting a novel written was having the discipline to sit down and write it regularly, like it's a job. And so I used that because there is some accountability, and other people are doing it. There's an expectation. It was a little more pressure I could put on myself, which I know is how I work best. I'm a journalist. I like a deadline, and I meet them. I'm obsessive about deadlines. So yeah, it was definitely really helpful in getting that first book written. I started in November, continued at almost the same pace into December and January, and then had a book finished in like 10 weeks. And when you see I can write a book in 10 weeks, that is a big deal. Because you hear about it taking years and you think it's years of constant work, but it's not. It's an intensive bout at the beginning, and then it's intensive bursts of going back, and because the first draft it's crap. I don't care how good you think your first draft is. Every first draft is crap. Accept it. Then you go back and you get to make it better, which is exciting. I am a lot of writers think I'm insane. I love the editing process. Which, yeah, I know it's supposed to be painful and awful, but it's just, I like finding ways to make it better. It's exciting when I find a solution, to a problem I created for myself. But yeah, you get to make it better and then give it to readers and make it better again. And then, finally you get it out there to the world, and hopefully it's really good now because you made it better with with your 11 different drafts, however many you end up with it. The first one was, draft after draft after that. It's gotten a lot shorter since then to get it actually, marketable and readable. But yeah, anyone who's had that problem of just having the discipline, use National Novel Writing Month to get you in the habit, to show you how easy it is to hit that daily word count, to get that 50,000 words in a month, to write a book in 2 or 3 months. You can do it. I didn't have plans. I didn't have an outline. I didn't have the world fully created. I was just completely going blind by the seat of my pants. I made wrong turns and had to delete, several scenes and, retrack. And it was a complete mess. And it was like 135,000 words. Just stupid long, especially for a first novel. Even in fantasy, that's too long. That same book is sitting at 104,000 words right now. And I'm going through and brushing it up for the second edition, and which every author should do. After you've written 5 or 6 books, go back and re-edit that first one, because you can make it a lot better. You've learned a lot since then. But yeah, it's fun being able to go back and see how far I've come and revisit that world and really get my head back in it. So I can get that trilogy finished up and out there. But yeah, I've only written 1 book that I didn't start during National Novel Writing Month.
Oh, wow.
the rest of them came from that. So it's big.
If you can do, for the listeners out there, if you can do one book a year, you're doing pretty good. So I would second, definitely use the novel writing month, because by the end of 30 days, hopefully you will have formed a habit of not being afraid to start. And I'll also say, because I have a first book that is now gone from the internet too. So don't be afraid of the mess, even if it, even if you don't make it to the end of a finished book by the end of the 30 days. Like everybody, when you start working on your first long form book, like you have to go through the terrible swamp of prose just to get it out of your system. So don't be afraid of it. You can always use the editing, like you say, to take the blob and form it into something.
Yeah, and one of the things that really helped me was that previously, I'd write the first chapter and then I'd set it aside for 3 weeks, and then I'd go back to it. I'd read through the first chapter so I could remember what happened, but I would get caught editing that first chapter over and over and over. I never got very far into the story. Mm-hmm. With Nano, just don't let yourself go back. What I do, I keep a Word document open in the background, and if I have an idea for something I need to add in earlier, I go make a note of it and go back to moving forward, because you got to get that word count. And I'll tell you what, if you can get to the end, then you start editing, because until you get to the end, you don't know what needs to be edited.
Yeah, because once you know your ending, then you can sort of tailor everything and foreshadow. The big writers and authors, I mean, they can say that they do one draft and that's it, and it's amazing. But like the intricate stories with all of the little hidden things, there's no way that you're coming up with all that in one sweep. You've got to go back through and craft it.
Yeah, you do. It's like there are things that I'll set up that end up, I'm just going to eliminate that entire subplot because it doesn't add anything when I thought it was going to be important. And there are things that I'll add an entire subplot later to just prop up one aspect of the ending, because it makes it better that way. There's just, you honestly don't know what the first chapter needs to be until you've written the last one. And once you get to the end, then you start editing. But like literally don't edit a word until you've got to the end. Because if you don't have a complete story, you don't have anything to edit.
Absolutely.
And so get to the end, then make it better.
Yes, definitely. So I've got one more question for you, which somebody recommended to me. I don't remember who did, but is there anything that I have not touched upon or asked you that you would like to have out in the world?
Oh boy, that's always a tough question. I think really just right now is an incredible time to be a content creator. Like you say, content is king. Everybody wants new, fresh, great content, whether it's fiction or comic books, graphic novels, short films, podcasts. If you have an urge to create something, do it. The first thing you create probably won't be very good, but the 10th thing you create will be better. I look back at my first short film and I was like, oh, if I could go back and reshoot this, I'd do this and this and this and this differently, and all that kind of stuff. And then I compare that to, my most recent film that's gotten into a couple of festivals and that kind of thing. Is like, wow, I came a long way in, 6 or 7 years as a filmmaker. Editing my first novel again, I'm saying I've come a long way as a writer. Keep doing it. There's, kind of an adage out there that, you have to do something 10,000 times before you get any good at it. For writing, 10,000 words before you write any good ones. If you want to be a writer, get a job writing. There are freelance jobs all over the internet. Start out with the ones that pay almost nothing. Build up a portfolio. Get to the point where you can charge $0.25 a word, or $900 for a complete article. But start with the small potatoes and just keep writing, because every time you write something, you will get better.
Absolutely.
I think I was able to find a small amount of success fairly quickly as far as just getting my work out there to people in the publishing industry, because I had years of experience as a professional writer. I was writing every day. I wrote television newscasts, I wrote newspaper articles, I wrote, but just write. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't care if it's obituaries, product descriptions for an online catalog. Write. You will get better. And every single thing you write, fiction or not, will make your fiction better.
Absolutely. So there, for everyone out there who is aspiring to do it, just do it. You can just start. It all starts with a blank page, no matter what it is. And one trick for the really scared people, I will say, every text message that you write is a blank space. You just have a chain up there of stuff that you've already done. So just go for it. Go for it. Absolutely. I am happy that, it sounds obvious, but there's no excuse. You have so much at your disposal right now as a creator.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. Wattpad and YouTube, and you can get yourself out there to people in some form. And get feedback, and that's the best thing to have as a writer.
Absolutely. So before I wrap it all up, because I will talk forever if I don't follow my list of things.
Yeah, me too.
But where can readers out there, where can they go to find your books? And also, if you're online, where can they find you?
My books are in all the standard places: Amazon, Smashwords, all the standard places. There are audiobooks of Hero Academy and Plague that are in the later stages that will be out at some point. So if you prefer audiobooks, they're coming. They're not quite here yet. I am just about to launch a newsletter, so I'll have signups available on my website. If you Google my name, and I know it's both names are spelled crazy, find me on Facebook, copy it, paste it into Google, or actually find me on Facebook. I've got a link to my website, Adrienne Dellwo, author. Just like my page, and the link is there, and I post updates somewhat regularly, especially during November. And if there's a new book coming out, so I'll be on there quite a bit. If you want to get a hold of me about, talk about writing or filmmaking or my books or whatever, please feel free to send me a message. I'm always happy to talk to people about writing and creativity, whatever. My books, you can get them through the local Hero Press site, as well as on, all the normal places where you go to look for books. And my urban fantasy series, my third intern book will be out next year, hopefully. So there's only 2 now, but more coming.
More to come. So subscribe to the newsletter when it's out, so you know.
And if you're ever just right, and if you're ever just bored, go to my website. I've got most of my short films posted there, so you can watch a few little movies for free. They're short, they're not big commitments. There's links to where you can get my short stories, everything.
Excellent. Yeah. So for the listeners, there you have it. You have this place to go, so go do it.
But I'm technically on Instagram and Twitter, but I'm not really there.
Yeah, it's more I'm there to lurk and read. I don't post anything really. It's boring.
Yeah. So Facebook is, I know Facebook's for old people, but even if you're not an old person, just go like my page, and then you'll get notifications about stuff.
Yep.
And sign up for the newsletter when I have it. I'm hoping it's ready before this actually airs, so it might be ready by the time anyone sees this. I'm working on it right now. So
excellent. Well, before I close it up, I just want to thank you so much for being on. It is an absolute pleasure to chat.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
You're very welcome. I've had an excellent time talking. So for all the listeners out there, just to wrap it up for you, wherever you're listening, just want to remind you all, please subscribe, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on iTunes and all the other places, so you don't miss out when a future episode is uploaded. Make sure you give us a like and let us know what you think in the comments. Just if you discuss spoilers, if you could just tag that you're going to be talking about spoilers. So if you're someone like me who scrolls through way too many comments because you love to hear back and forth, you can skip through if you haven't read the books that you are spoiling. So as always, just want to thank all of you for tuning in. I appreciate all of you, whether you're new or old to this podcast, and I will see you next time.